My name is Amanda Reese. I'm 35 years old. At 7:06 on a Tuesday morning, my mother called me from the side of Highway 42 and said, "Amanda, your brother has been in an accident." I was standing in my kitchen in my work blouse and bare feet, holding a travel mug of coffee in one hand and my phone in the other, watching rain run down the window above my sink. For 1 second, everything that had happened before that call disappeared. The missing money, the lie, the truck, the way my parents had looked at me across their dining table and said, "Family helps family," as if that sentence could turn theft into virtue. All of it vanished under one terrible question: is Mason alive? My mother made a sound that was almost a sob. "Yes, he's alive. He's hurt, but he's alive." I closed my eyes. No matter how angry you are, there are some sentences you still need to hear. "Where is he?" "County General. They took him by ambulance. Your father is following." "Are you hurt?" "No, I wasn't in the truck." The truck, of course, the truck my brother Mason had bought 6 weeks earlier. A black lifted pickup with chrome wheels, leather seats, custom lights, a sound system he could not afford, and a monthly payment that made no sense for a 29-year-old man who had never kept a job longer than 18 months without blaming his boss, the economy, or people not respecting hustle. The truck my parents secretly helped him buy using my emergency fund, not their savings, not a loan in their name, my money. $12,000 I had saved over 4 years in an account I opened after my divorce, after my ex-husband left me with a drained checking account, 2 late utility bills, and the kind of fear that makes a woman check her bank balance before sleeping. $12,000 I kept partly in cash in a small lockbox at my parents' house for what I thought was safety. My mistake. My parents had always told me their home was the one place I could keep things without worry. "You know we would never touch your money," Mom said when I tucked the envelope inside Dad's old fireproof safe. Dad patted the safe like it was a family altar. "Emergency money should stay somewhere safe, Mandy. Somewhere safe." 6 weeks before the accident, I went to add $800 to the fund and found the envelope gone. Not moved. Not misplaced. Gone. At first, my mother acted confused, then concerned, then cornered. My father finally admitted they had borrowed it. For Mason. For the down payment on the truck. He needed reliable transportation, Dad said. I stared at him in their kitchen. He had a car. That Civic was falling apart. It needed brakes. Mason said the transmission was going. Mason says a lot of things when he wants someone else to pay. Mom looked wounded. "Amanda." I turned to her. "You took my emergency fund." She folded a dish towel with shaking hands. "We were going to tell you." "When?" Dad said, "Don't use that tone." I laughed once. That tone, the sound a woman makes when discovering her parents stole from her and still expect softer delivery. "You took $12,000 from me." Dad said, "We didn't take it. We used it to help your brother." "That is taking." Family helps family. The phrase landed like a door closing. My mother nodded, tears in her eyes. Mason needed a fresh start. Mason has had more fresh starts than most people get birthdays. "That's cruel," Mom whispered. "No. Cruel is stealing from your daughter because your son wanted a truck he couldn't afford." Dad slammed his palm on the table. "He is your brother." "I know exactly who he is." "You don't have children," Mom said softly, which was her way of saying I could not understand unconditional love because I had not produced someone to excuse forever. I looked at both of them. "I am your child." Neither of them answered. That silence changed something in me, not all at once, but enough. Now my mother was crying into the phone from the highway, asking me to come to the hospital because Mason was hurt, and Dad was not thinking clearly. I asked, "What happened?" "He hit another car near the exit. The roads were wet. I don't know details." "Was anyone else hurt?" A pause. "I don't know." That mattered. It mattered immediately. "Mom, listen to me. Is Mason conscious?" They said yes. "Was he driving?" "Yes." "Was he sober?" "Amanda." "Was he?" I don't know. Was he insured? Another pause. This one was worse. Your father said he handled it. I put my coffee down. Mom, I don't know. The rain hit the window harder. I looked at my work bag on the chair, my laptop inside, my lunch packed neatly beside it, the ordinary morning I had planned dissolving in front of me. I'll come to the hospital, I said, but I need you to understand something before I get there. What? I am coming because Mason is hurt. Not because the theft is forgiven. She began crying harder. This is not the time. No, I said quietly. This is exactly the time consequences start arriving. At 9:32, I walked into County General Hospital and found my family in the emergency waiting area. Mom sat near the vending machines, mascara smudged under her eyes, both hands wrapped around a paper cup of water. Dad paced by the window in his work boots, phone pressed to his ear, saying, "No, we don't know anything yet," in the same voice he used when pretending he had control over things already falling apart. Mason's girlfriend, Tessa, sat in the corner with her knees pulled together, crying into a tissue. She had glitter on her eyelids and mud on the hem of her jeans. Mason was being evaluated. Broken collarbone, concussion, possible rib fractures, lots of cuts, alive. The other driver, a woman in her 60s, had been taken to the same hospital with a broken wrist and chest pain from the seatbelt. Also alive. Thank God. I said that silently, because gratitude and fury can share a room when they have to. Mom stood when she saw me. "Oh, Amanda." She reached for me. I stepped back. Not dramatically, just enough. Her face crumpled. Dad noticed. His eyes hardened. "Your brother could have died." "I know." "And you're going to act like this?" "I'm asking whether he's alive, whether the other driver is alive, and whether the truck was insured. That is not acting. That is thinking." Dad looked away. There it was. The insurance question had teeth. Tessa stood and whispered. The police officer asked for proof of insurance. Mason couldn't find it in the truck. My stomach tightened. Dad snapped, "Tessa, not now." She flinched. I turned to her gently. "What did Mason say?" She swallowed. "He said the card was probably in his email. Then he said his dad had helped with the paperwork." I looked at my father. "Dad." He rubbed the back of his neck. "I thought Mason set it up." "You thought?" "He said he got a quote." "A quote is not insurance." Dad's face reddened. I had a lot going on. "You used my emergency fund for a truck and didn't make sure it was insured?" Mom whispered, "Amanda, please." "No. If that truck was uninsured and he injured another person, this is bigger than family." A nurse came out then and asked for Mason Reese's family. Mom hurried forward. Dad followed. I stayed back for a moment, breathing through my nose the way my therapist had taught me after my divorce. In for 4, hold for 4, out for 6. Do not let other people's crisis turn you into their unpaid cleanup crew. That sentence had become a prayer for me. Inside the small consultation room, the doctor told us Mason was stable. He would need observation for the concussion and follow-up care. No internal bleeding. Collarbone fracture. Pain management. No driving for a while. Mom cried with relief. Dad cried too, quietly. I felt relief loosen something in my chest. Then a police officer asked to speak with the family. His name was Officer Delaney. He was professional, calm, and had the careful tone of someone who had delivered many facts to people, hoping emotion would make them disappear. "The accident report is still preliminary," he said. "Weather may have been a factor. We'll also be looking at speed, following distance, and phone records if needed." Mr. Reese stated he was driving the black Ford pickup registered in his name. Dad nodded. "Yes." Officer Delaney continued, "We were unable to verify active insurance at the scene." Mom covered her mouth. Dad said, "There should be insurance." The officer looked at him. "Do you have documentation?" Dad hesitated. "No." I asked, "Was the truck financed?" Officer Delaney looked at me. "That may be relevant for the insurer and lender. Are you the owner?" "No." Dad said quickly, "Amanda is his sister." Officer Delaney nodded. We'll need Mr. Reese or his authorized representative to provide proof as soon as possible. I asked, was there any paperwork in the vehicle? Yes, registration, purchase documents, and a temporary lender packet. May we see copies? Dad glared at me. The officer said, Mr. Reese can request copies from the report file. The other driver's insurer may also pursue information. Other driver's insurer, lawsuit, medical bills, liability. Words began lining up in my mind, each one heavy. Then Tessa, still standing near the door, said quietly, the down payment receipt was in the glove box. Dad turned. Tessa. She looked at me. It had your name on it. The room went silent. My name, my emergency fund. My money had not just purchased the truck in some vague family help way. My name was in the paperwork. I looked at my father. What did you do? He said nothing. Mom began crying again. Officer Delaney's eyes moved between us, professional interest sharpening. I said, Dad. He exhaled. The dealership needed source documentation for the down payment. My voice went very quiet. Source documentation? They asked where the cash came from. So you used my name? No, we. You what? Mom whispered, we showed the withdrawal slips. I stared at her. What withdrawal slips? Dad said, the money was in cash. I deposited it into my account first. My hands went cold. You deposited my emergency fund into your account. It had to be converted for the down payment. And then? He looked away. And then, we transferred it. To Mason? To the dealership. With my name attached? Dad said, only as source, not ownership. Only as source. As if being the source of stolen money, used in a financed truck now involved in an accident, was a minor clerical detail. Officer Delaney cleared his throat. I'm gonna step out for a moment. Good man. He knew when a family room had become a crime scene of a different kind. When the door closed, I looked at my parents. You didn't just take my money, you created a paper trail making it look like I contributed to Mason's truck. Dad said, it doesn't look like anything. It looks exactly like what happened, except without my consent. Mom reached for me. Amanda, we never meant. I stepped back again. Stop. Do not finish that sentence unless the last word is theft. Dad's jaw tightened. Don't you dare talk to your mother like that. I am 35 years old, and you stole $12,000 from me, deposited it into your account, used it for Mason's truck, attached my name to the source paperwork, failed to make sure the truck was insured, and now a woman is injured. You do not get to correct my tone. Mason's voice came from the bed behind the curtain, weak, slurred, still somehow defensive. Why is she yelling? I closed my eyes. Of course, even half-conscious, he was the victim of my volume. Mom rushed to him. Sweetheart, it's okay. No, I thought, it was not. And for the first time in my life, I decided I would not help them make it sound like it was. This is that story. Before I tell you how my parents learned that stealing my emergency fund for my brother's truck becomes much harder to excuse when that truck ends up in an accident and the paperwork shows where the money came from, tell me where you are watching or listening from, and what time it is there. I always wonder who hears stories like this while remembering the moment. Family helps family suddenly meant you were expected to pay, forgive, stay quiet, and clean up the mess. And if you connect with stories about women who were used, dismissed, betrayed, and quietly took their power back, like and subscribe to Ultimate Revenge. Some women do not scream in the hospital hallway. Some women ask for the paperwork. I grew up in Henderson, Kentucky, in a small yellow house with a carport, a chain-link fence, and a family rule that was never written down but controlled everything. Mason needed more. That was the rule. Not because he was sick, not because he was disabled, not because he was younger by 6 years, though my parents used that excuse until he was old enough to grow a beard and still somehow be the baby. Mason needed more because Mason asked louder. He wanted more attention, more money, more chances, more rides, more forgiveness, more room to fail, more explanations made on his behalf. I needed less, according to my parents, because I learned early that asking came with disappointment. I got good grades, worked part-time, bought my own prom dress with money from babysitting, Filled out my college applications alone. Chose community college first because it was cheaper. Transferred later. Paid my car insurance. Became the daughter people described as so responsible, in the same tone they might describe a dishwasher. Useful. Quiet. Expected to work. My mother, Carol, was loving in a worried way. She kept a clean house, cooked big meals, and believed family loyalty was the highest moral calling, though loyalty in our house usually flowed toward whoever had created the newest emergency. My father, Ron, worked maintenance at a manufacturing plant. He was proud, stubborn, and allergic to admitting when Mason manipulated him. "He just needs direction," Dad said when Mason quit trade school. "He just needs confidence," Mom said when Mason got fired for missing shifts. "He just needs reliable transportation," they both said when he wrecked his old car after ignoring a brake noise for 3 months. Mason always just needed. I always just managed. The symbolic object in this story was the fireproof safe. Gray metal. Heavy. Scratched on one side. Combination dial slightly loose. It sat in the bottom of my parents' hall closet under winter blankets and old tax folders. Dad bought it after a neighbor's house fire when I was 12. He told me important papers belonged somewhere fire could not eat them. Birth certificates. Insurance policies. Savings bonds. Car titles. My grandmother's ring. Later, my emergency fund. After my divorce at 31, that safe became a promise. My ex-husband, Kyle, was not violent. He was not dramatic. He was simply irresponsible in a way that left wreckage behind polite explanations. He drained our joint account to cover debts I did not know existed, missed 2 car payments, and left me with a lease I could barely afford. The day I realized I had $43 in checking, I sat on my bathroom floor and promised myself I would never again be one person's bad decision away from panic. I built the emergency fund slowly. $20, $50, $100 when I could, tax refund, work bonus, money from selling furniture after the divorce, cash from cleaning out the old storage unit. I kept most of it in a high-yield savings account eventually. But I also kept $12,000 in cash, because the first fear after financial betrayal is often irrational. I wanted money I could touch, money that did not require a password, bank hours, or anyone else's permission. Was that perfect financial planning? No. Was it trauma wrapped in envelopes? Yes. My therapist called it a safety behavior. I called it sleeping better. When I asked Dad if I could store the cash envelope in his safe, he acted honored. "Of course, Mandy." Mom hugged me. "You never have to worry about anything in this house." I believed her. That is the part that still hurts. Not that Mason took, not that my father justified. That I believed my parents' house was safer than a bank because love lived there. Love did live there. So did entitlement. Mason's truck obsession began the year before the accident. He had a perfectly usable older Honda Civic that needed maintenance. He hated it. He said it made him look broke. He was working then for a construction subcontractor, hauling himself to job sites, complaining that no one took him seriously when he pulled up in a college girl car. "You are not buying an expensive truck," I told him at Sunday dinner after he showed everyone listings on his phone. He smirked. "Nobody asked you, money police." Dad chuckled. Mom said, "It would help him with work." "It would help him look like he has work," I said. Mason rolled his eyes. "There she goes." I said, "You are behind on your credit card." "How do you know?" "Because you complained about the minimum payment last week." "That doesn't mean I'm broke." "No, the declined card at Mom's birthday dinner suggested that." Mom gasped. "Amanda." Mason stood. "This is why nobody tells you anything. You act like you're better than us because you have a spreadsheet." "I have a spreadsheet because math keeps receipts even when people don't." Dad snapped. "Enough." Enough always meant I had said something true too sharply. For months, Mason sent truck photos to the family group chat. Black ones, red ones, lifted ones, ones with custom rims, ones with payments higher than my first apartment rent. Mom responded with heart emojis. Dad responded with practical questions that somehow still sounded like encouragement. I responded once. "Can you afford insurance, taxes, maintenance, fuel, and the payment?" Mason replied. "Can you afford a personality?" The chat erupted with laughing emojis. Mom sent one too, then texted me privately. Don't take him seriously. He jokes because he feels judged. I replied. He feels judged because he is making bad decisions. She did not answer. 6 weeks before the accident, Mason bought the truck. He drove it to my parents' house on a Saturday afternoon. Horn honking, music loud, black paint gleaming under the sun. Mom came out clapping. Dad walked around it like a man inspecting a miracle. I stood on the porch. Mason leaned against the door and grinned. Well? I said, it's a truck. Jealous? Of the payment? No. Mom frowned. Can you just be happy for him? I looked at the chrome wheels. The paper temporary tag. The dealership sticker. The confidence on Mason's face. How did you get approved? Dad said too quickly. He worked it out. I looked at him. What does that mean? Mason laughed. It means I'm grown. That was the first moment something felt wrong. Not because Mason got approved. People get approved for things they cannot afford every day. That is half the American economy. But Dad's face. Mom's hands twisting. The way Mason avoided my eyes. 4 days later, I went to add money to the emergency fund. The safe was in the closet. The envelope was gone. At first, I thought Dad had moved it to make room. Then I saw the spot where it had been, a rectangle in dust. I called Mom. Where is my envelope? What envelope? The lie was so immediate it insulted both of us. My emergency fund. Oh, maybe your father moved things. Mom, I'll ask him. Ask him now. He's at the store. Call him. Her breathing changed. That was when I knew. I drove to their house with my hands shaking. Dad's truck was in the driveway. He had not been at the store. They sat at the kitchen table like people waiting for a storm they had caused. Dad told me. Mom cried. Mason was not there. Of course. The first confrontation ended with me leaving, because if I stayed, I might have said things I could not unsay, and my parents would have used my anger to avoid my point. I sent a written demand that night. I want the full $12,000 returned within 30 days. If you cannot repay immediately, I want a written repayment agreement signed by both of you and Mason by Friday. Dad called it disrespectful. Mom called it painful. Mason sent me a gif of someone counting cash and wrote, "Relax, I'll pay you back when my overtime starts. I saved everything. By Friday, no repayment agreement." By the next week, they had shifted from apology to justification. You had the money sitting there. Mason needed it now. We were going to put it back. You don't have kids. Your brother has had a hard year. The truck helps him work. Family helps family. I stopped arguing and started documenting. I contacted a local attorney for a consultation. Her name was Rachel Wynn. She specialized in small civil matters and had the calm voice of someone who had heard every family excuse in 3 counties. Was the money clearly yours? She asked. Yes. Envelope labeled Amanda Emergency, my deposits tracked, texts with Mom confirming storage. Did they admit taking it? In texts and conversation. Did they promise repayment? Verbally. Send a written demand by certified mail. Keep everything factual. If they do not repay, small claims may not cover the full amount depending on jurisdictional limit. But we can discuss options. I asked, what if I don't want to sue my parents? She said, then you still document as if you might. Good advice. Painful, but good. Then the accident happened. And the paperwork turned my private theft into a public liability problem. After the hospital conversation, I called Rachel from the parking lot. I told her about the accident, the possible insurance issue, the down payment source paperwork, and my name attached to the funds. She was silent for a moment, then said, "Do not sign anything. Do not speak to insurers without counsel. Do not allow anyone to describe you as a contributor, co-buyer, guarantor, or financial participant in that truck purchase. Send me everything." I didn't sign truck paperwork. Good, but if your name appears as fund source, we need to clarify that the funds were used without consent. My stomach tightened. That sounds like accusing my parents of theft officially. Amanda, she said gently, They involved your money in a vehicle transaction without permission. The accident did not create that fact, it raised the stakes. I looked toward the hospital entrance. Rainwater ran along the curb. My mother came outside and looked around until she saw me. Her face collapsed with relief, as if I were still the person who would organize the crisis and soften the consequences. I ended the call. Mom approached. The finance company called Mason. They need information. I'm not handling Mason's financing. You're so good with paperwork. There it was, even now, even here, the reliable daughter being summoned. I said, Mom, I will help make sure no one dies, no one is abandoned at the hospital, and the truth is documented. I will not help cover up what you did. She cried, You make it sound so ugly. It is ugly. We were trying to help him. You used me. She wiped her face. He's your brother. I know. You keep saying that like it explains why I matter less. Her mouth opened. Nothing came out. Good. Let silence do some work. Inside, Mason wanted to see me. I did not want to go. I went anyway. He looked smaller in the hospital bed. Bruised face. Sling. Bandage near his temple. Machines beeping softly. Tessa sat beside him holding his hand. When I entered, he looked away first. That was new. Hey, he muttered. Hey. Mom hovered by the door. Dad stood with arms crossed. Mason said, You heard about the insurance thing? Yes. I thought Dad handled it. Dad snapped, You're a grown man. Mason's head turned. You said you'd help. I helped with the down payment. With Amanda's money, I said. Mason closed his eyes. Not now. Yes. Now. He looked at me, pain and anger mixed. I almost died. I know. I could have died, and you're worried about money? I am worried about the injured woman, the uninsured truck, the financing documents, the stolen emergency fund, and the fact that everyone in this room still thinks my concern for consequences means I don't care that you're alive. Tessa whispered, She's right. Everyone looked at her. Mason's face tightened. Tessa did not back down. You told me your parents gave you the money. You didn't say it was Amanda's. Mason stared at the blanket. I didn't know at first. I looked at him. At first? He said nothing. Mason. He swallowed. I found out after. When? After the dealership. And you didn't tell me? He winced. I was going to pay it back. With what? The question did not need to be spoken. Tessa let go of his hand. That hurt him more than anything I said. The paperwork came fully into view over the next week. The truck had no active insurance policy. Mason had gotten quotes but never finalized payment because the premium was, quote, ridiculous. Dad thought Mason had handled it. Mason thought he had, a grace period, which he did not. The finance company had required proof of insurance, but the dealership's paperwork had a binder notation that apparently failed verification later. There were arguments about who dropped the ball. None of them changed the fact that at the time of the accident, coverage was not active. The other driver's insurer opened a claim. The finance company demanded information. The dealership requested documents. And there, in the purchase file, was a down payment source statement referencing funds transferred from Ron Reese with notation, family contribution from Amanda Reese emergency savings. Family contribution. I stared at the document in Rachel's office. My name looked wrong in that context, like someone had broken into my life and left my signature's shadow behind. Rachel tapped the paper. Did you authorize this notation? No. Did you sign anything? No. Did you give verbal permission? No. Then we respond. She drafted a letter stating clearly that I did not authorize the use of my funds, did not contribute voluntarily to the truck purchase, did not co-sign, did not guarantee, did not hold ownership interest, and had demanded repayment before the accident. She attached copies of my certified demand, text admissions from my parents, and my bank withdrawal records showing the accumulation of funds. She also sent a formal repayment demand to my parents and Mason. This time, no family language. Conversion, misappropriation, unauthorized use. Repayment. My mother called me sobbing after receiving it. Amanda, How could you send a lawyer letter to your own parents? I was at my kitchen table with a folder spread open in front of me. The same way you could take your daughter's emergency fund and give it to your son. She cried harder. You know we don't have $12,000 just sitting around. I know, I did, that's why you took mine. Amanda? No, Mom, I need you to hear that. The reason you stole my money was because I had done the hard work of saving it. She whispered. We thought you'd understand. I understand perfectly. Dad got on the phone. You are tearing this family apart. No, Dad, I am refusing to finance the lie that it was whole. He said nothing, then hung up. That was the first time he had ever ended a call before I did. It felt strange, almost peaceful. I need to pause here for a second. If you have ever been the responsible one, whose savings, time, car, house, credit, or emotional energy became the family emergency fund without your consent, you know what Amanda felt. It was not just about the money, it was about being expected to absorb the consequences because you were careful enough to have something worth taking. If this story is hitting close to home, leave a comment and tell me when family helps family started sounding like you pay for everyone. And if you have not already, subscribe to Ultimate Revenge. The quiet part is over. Mason was released from the hospital after 2 days. He moved into my parents' house temporarily because he could not drive, could not work construction with a broken collarbone, and apparently could not be trusted to manage his own medication schedule. Mom took care of him like he was 15. Dad grumbled but installed a recliner in the living room. I did not visit immediately. That became another crime, Aunt Linda called. Your mother says you haven't come by. My brother is stable. He's hurt. Yes. You're holding grudges. I'm holding documents. She sighed. Money comes and goes, Amanda. So do boundaries if you don't maintain them. A family should not need lawyers. A family should not steal emergency funds. She did not call again. Good. The other driver, Mrs. Helen Carter, became the part of the story that kept me from letting anger become too simple. She had been driving to a physical therapy appointment when Mason hydroplaned, overcorrected, and clipped the front of her car. The investigation eventually found speed unsafe for conditions but no intoxication, no texting confirmed, negligent, not malicious. Still, she was hurt. Broken wrist, bruising. Follow-up cardiology because chest pain after impact at her age was not trivial. I thought about her often. A stranger whose morning became pain because my brother wanted a truck he could not afford, my parents wanted to rescue him, and nobody made sure basic responsibilities were handled. I asked Rachel whether I could write to Mrs. Carter. She advised caution. Do not discuss liability. If you want to send a simple note expressing concern without admitting responsibility, we can draft it. So we did. Dear Mrs. Carter, I am Mason Reese's sister. I was very sorry to learn you were injured in the accident. I hope your recovery is steady and that you are receiving the care you need. I know this does not change what happened, but I wanted to acknowledge that you are a person in this situation, not just a claim number. Sincerely, Amanda Reese. Rachel reviewed it, sent it through appropriate channels. Mrs. Carter replied 3 weeks later with one sentence. Thank you for remembering that, I cried at my desk. Not because I had done something noble. Because she had been reduced to paperwork, too. I knew how that felt. The repayment issue moved slowly. My parents insisted they could only pay small amounts monthly. Mason promised to pay when he returned to work. I refused vague promises. Rachel helped draft a formal repayment agreement. $12,000 principal. No interest if paid according to schedule. Joint and several responsibility among Mom, Dad, and Mason. Monthly payments. Automatic transfer. Acceleration clause if missed. Acknowledgement that funds were used without Amanda's authorization. That acknowledgement nearly ended the negotiation. Dad refused. I'm not signing something that says I stole. Rachel said, the proposed language says used without authorization. I won't admit that. I looked at him across Rachel's conference table. Did I authorize it? He stared at me. Mom cried beside him. Mason, still in a sling, looked at the floor. Dad said, we made a parental decision. I laughed softly. I was 35. No one spoke. Rachel let the silence sit. Good attorneys know silence is sometimes billable and useful, Finally, Mason said, "I'll sign it." Mom gasped. Dad turned. "Mason." Mason looked tired, bruised, younger than 29 and older at the same time. "She didn't say we could use it." Dad's face hardened. "You don't understand what this means." Mason looked at me. "I understand she saved that money after Kyle screwed her over, and we took it from my truck." We. Not they. That mattered. Dad stood. "I need air." He left the room. Mom followed. Mason stayed. For the first time in my adult life, I sat alone with my brother in a room where neither of us was performing our assigned roles. He said, "I'm sorry." I looked at him. "For what specifically?" He closed his eyes briefly, like the question hurt. "For letting them use your money. For not telling you when I found out. For acting like I deserved the truck because I wanted it. For making you the bad guy when you were the only one asking the questions I should have asked." My throat tightened. "Thank you. I don't know how I'm going to pay you back. You're going to sign the agreement and get a job when you're cleared." He nodded. "I know. And sell the truck if needed." His face changed. "That truck is wrecked." "Then insurance would have helped." He almost smiled. "Almost. Yeah." That was the first honest conversation Mason and I had had in years. It did not fix everything. But truth had entered. Dad returned 20 minutes later. He signed. Mom signed. Mason signed. I signed. The automatic payments began the next month. Small at first. $400. Then $600. When Mason started working again at a warehouse job that did not require him to drive a personal truck. Dad sold some equipment. Mom picked up extra shifts at the school cafeteria. Mason sold the sound system components salvaged from the truck. The finance company repossessed what remained after the accident settlement process tangled itself through uninsured loss consequences. Mason's credit took a hit. Dad's pride took a bigger one. The family group chat went quiet. No truck memes. No jokes about me being money police. No "family helps family" quotes on pastel backgrounds. For a while, just silence. Then one evening, Mom texted me privately. "Payment sent. I know this does not fix it. I am sorry." I stared at the message. Then replied, "Payment received." That was all I had. The public payoff came at Mason's accident-related civil mediation. Not courtroom dramatic. No judge slamming a gavel. Real life is often fluorescent lights, conference rooms, vending machine coffee, and people signing documents with faces they will remember longer than the paper. I attended only because my name had appeared in the funding documents, and Rachel wanted to ensure the record was clear. Mason was there with his attorney. My parents came. Mrs. Carter was in another room with her counsel and insurer. At one point, the down payment source came up. Mason's attorney tried to describe it as, quote, "family assistance." Rachel corrected him. "Unauthorized use of Miss Reese's emergency savings, now subject to a repayment agreement." The mediator looked at my parents. Dad's face reddened. Mom looked down. Mason said quietly, "That's correct." The room paused. Mason continued, "Amanda did not agree to help me buy the truck." I looked at him. He did not look away, and I should not have let anyone say otherwise. There it was, not enough to erase the theft, not enough to undo the accident, but enough to stop the lie from entering one more official room. After mediation, in the hallway, Mrs. Carter's attorney approached Rachel. They spoke briefly. Then Mrs. Carter herself came over, wrist still in a brace. She looked at me. "You're Amanda?" "Yes." "Thank you for your note." "Of course." She glanced toward Mason, then my parents. "Families make messes," she said. "They do. You seem like someone who cleans them." "I'm learning not to clean all of them." She smiled faintly. "Good." Then she walked away. Sometimes strangers bless you more honestly than relatives. That night, Dad called. I almost did not answer, then did. He said, "Mason did the right thing today." "Yes?" A pause. "So did you." I sat down. That sentence from my father was rare enough to require furniture. He continued, "I was wrong." I waited. He hated silence when it asked for specificity. Good. I was wrong to take the money, he said. My eyes burned. And? He exhaled. To tell myself it was borrowing because I planned to put it back. And? To make you feel like you were selfish for wanting it returned. And? His voice roughened. To act like Mason being my son mattered more than you being my daughter. There it was. The sentence I had needed for years. Not just about the money. About the math of our family. I closed my eyes. Thank you. He cleared his throat. I don't know how to fix that. You start by not doing it again. A quiet laugh. Sad. Fair. Mom apologized properly 2 days later. In person. At my house. She brought no casserole, no tears first, no guilt performance. She sat at my kitchen table and placed both hands around a mug of tea. I am sorry, we took your emergency fund. I nodded. I am sorry I said family helps family when what I meant was you should sacrifice because Mason wanted something. My throat tightened. I'm sorry I used the fact that you don't have children to make your needs seem smaller. That one hurt. Good apologies sometimes do, she cried then, but quietly. I think I believed you were okay because I needed you to be okay. I looked at her. I wasn't. I know now. I told you then. She nodded. I know. That mattered. She did not ask for comfort, so I gave her a little. Thank you for saying it. She reached into her purse and pulled out the spare key to the fireproof safe. I stared at it. I should not have had access to something you trusted me with if I could betray it, she said. I took the key. It felt heavier than it should have. The safe stayed at their house, but nothing of mine remained in it. I opened a separate savings account at a different bank. No cash envelope, no family storage. No emotional vault disguised as metal. The first time the balance reached $12,000 again, I cried. Not because the money was restored fully, because I had rebuilt what they took, without letting the theft become the end of my discipline. Eventually, they paid everything back. It took 17 months. Every payment came with a memo line. Repayment. Mason made the final transfer himself. The memo said, last payment, I'm sorry. Then he called. I sent it. I saw. You okay? I thought about that. Yes. Do you trust me? No. He was quiet, then said, fair. But I trust you more than I did when you were lying. That's something. It is. He laughed softly. I drive a used Corolla now. I know. It's ugly. Good. It has insurance. Better. He paused. I got promoted at the warehouse. Mason. Yeah, shift lead. That's good. I'm trying not to need rescuing. My eyes filled. Keep trying. I will. That was probably the closest we had come to sibling love in a decade. Not warm exactly, but honest. Honest is warmer than people think. My relationship with my parents changed permanently. Not destroyed, changed. I still go to Sunday dinner sometimes. I no longer leave my purse unattended in the hallway closet, though that is symbolic more than practical. I do not discuss my savings. I do not solve every paperwork problem. When Mason needs something, Mom no longer automatically looks at me. Sometimes she catches herself and looks down. Good. Let awareness interrupt habit. Dad asks before giving my number to anyone for help with insurance forms, taxes, or budgeting. He does not always like the answer. He respects it more than before. Aunt Linda eventually apologized for calling me unforgiving after she learned more of the details. Her apology included the phrase, I didn't know your name was on the funding paperwork, which annoyed me because the theft should have been enough, but I accepted the effort. Mrs. Carter recovered. Her wrist healed. Her insurer handled what it handled. Mason's financial consequences followed him for a long time, as they should. He later volunteered at a defensive driving class after his attorney suggested community responsibility might matter. He hated it at first. Then he told me one evening that telling younger drivers about the accident made him feel less like the stupidest person alive and more like someone who could stop another idiot. I said, that may be the most mature sentence you've ever said. He said, don't ruin it. I smiled. The fireproof safe still sits in my parents' hall closet. Gray. Heavy. Scratched. But when I see it now, I do not see safety. I see a lesson. Locks mean nothing if the people with the combination believe your boundaries are optional. So I changed the combination to my life. My money in my account. My documents in my cabinet. My emergency plan under my control. My help given by consent, not guilt. The final lesson is not that family should never help family. Family help can be beautiful. A ride after surgery. A meal after loss. A loan offered freely. A couch during a hard season. A hand extended without strings. But help taken without permission is not help. It is theft wearing a familiar face. My parents took my emergency fund for my brother's truck. Then they needed me after the accident. And when the paperwork revealed whose money paid for the down payment, the phrase "family helps family" finally had to stand next to the truth. Family does not help by stealing from one child to rescue another. Family does not help by calling the responsible daughter selfish because she wants back what was hers. Family does not help by creating a paper trail, then begging her to clean it up. I came to the hospital because my brother was alive and hurt. I asked the questions because another woman was hurt too. I demanded repayment because my safety mattered. And I let the paperwork speak because my parents had spent years trusting my silence more than my consent. Not anymore. Thank you for staying with me through this story. I know some of you have been the responsible daughter, the backup plan, the emergency contact, the secret bank, the unpaid fixer, the one everyone calls selfish, only after they have taken what you saved. If Amanda's story reached you, I hope you remember that your preparation is not family property. Your emergency fund is not a community fund. Your boundaries are not cruelty. Keep the records. Keep the withdrawal slips. Keep the demand letters. Keep the repayment agreement. And if someone says family helps family after taking from you without consent, let the paperwork answer back. Subscribe to Ultimate Revenge for more stories about quiet women, family betrayal, silent comebacks, and the moment one accident report exposes the whole truth. So tell me, if your parents secretly used your emergency fund to help your brother buy a truck, then needed you after that same truck was involved in an accident, would you forgive it as family helping family? Or would you make them sign the repayment agreement and finally admit what they did?